So, as I just discussed the circular flow of income, what you observed is that the economy in question may experience equilibrium in a particular time period when aggregate demand becomes equal to aggregate supply or injections become equal to leakages. But at the same time, we also came across two other possibilities: either injections are greater than leakages or injections are less than leakages. And in one situation, when the injections are less than leakages, we experience what is called recession. The economy slows down. And that is a very important or critical problem any economy of the world would be experiencing, and suppose a particular economy is experiencing, that one would like to overcome. Now, what I am going to discuss is to understand why there is a possibility of recession. If an economy is experiencing recession, why does it experience? Then, given the fact that why does it experience, we can come up with some measures which can cure the problems of recession. So, in order to address this particular issue, what I am going to discuss is Keynesian economics. That macroeconomics which was propounded by John Maynard Keynes. This Keynesian economics came up as a repudiation, as an alternative to classical theory during the times of Great Depression. You might have all heard about Great Depression of 1930s. Like it is, depression is the intense form of recession. If you cannot cure recession, you enter into depression. And this depression was very severe in 1930s. It started in 1929 and ended in 1929. Sorry, 1939. It started in 1929 and ended in 1939. Almost all the then developed countries of the world experienced depression. And in 1936, John Maynard Keynes came up with his own model by publishing his book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. That basically gave a new direction to macroeconomics. New ideologies were propounded, contrary to what was in prevalence prior to John Maynard Keynes or Keynesian economics. So before I discuss Keynesian economics, let me very briefly give you a kind of a background. What was there prior to Keynes? What kind of economic ideology or economic theory was in place? That was classical economics or classical theory. Prior to Keynes, there was classical theory in prevalence. Classical economics or classical theory was pioneered by Adam Smith, who is called the father of economics, and then there are many other economists through time who more or less followed the same model. What did they propound? They propounded that there can be automatic equilibrium in an economy. That equilibrium income that I just talked about, it can be automatic. An economy can attain full employment equilibrium income in the long run automatically. In the short run, there can be disturbances. However, in the long run, there can be the aggregate demand becomes equal to aggregate supply. And this particular proposition or the theory was based upon a premise that supply creates its own demand. They believed that anything which is supplied by engaging the resources or factors would be automatically demanded by the resource owners. So there cannot be possibilities of overproduction. Anything which is produced will be demanded. So in a sense, the classical economics was a supply-focused economy. It was emphasizing on supply side. So it was a supply-focused economics. Moreover, it was also considered to be a long-run theory, something which will be applicable to the long run, not to the short run, not to a short time period. It would be applicable to the long run. In the long run, there can be equilibrium, but there could be disturbances in the short run. This particular argument was based upon a few assumptions. One assumption was that there must be a laissez-faire setup. What is a laissez-faire setup? It is a kind of an economic system in which the role of the government is limited. Role of the government is restricted. It doesn't undertake economic activities. All the resources are owned by the private sector. Government's role is limited to a police state, implying thereby government's role is limited to protecting people from internal disturbances and external aggression. That is what the classical economists believed. There should be privatization in the economy. Private enterprises should be given free hand to operate. Government should not interfere in the free play of market forces. So they believe that the role of the government would be very minimal. Second one is, there is a free market economy. The market is free. The market under which goods and services are bought and sold, or factors are bought and sold, they are free. There is a free market economy, implying thereby that there is no government intervention in the free play of market forces. How much to produce, how to produce, at what price should you sell the product or a factor will not be decided by the government. The market will decide the price of the goods and services on the basis of the relative strength of demand and supply. How much you will sell in the market, at what price you will sell in the market, how much you will produce, who you should sell, at what price you should sell, everything should be left to the market. Government should not decide the price, the quantity and all that. That was the particular assumption the classical economists had taken. A free enterprise economy, free private enterprise economy, where private sectors are given to operate. They are the owners of all the factors of production. They are the owners of all the resources, and they will produce the goods and services. They will be free to sell the product even the factor owners are free to sell their factors at the prices which will be decided by the market. The third one is that they believed the market that I talk about is perfectly competitive. There is no imperfection in the market. There is no monopoly in market. What do you mean by monopoly? There is a single seller of a product or a factor. When there is a single seller, there is no imperfection in the market. Imperfection may come in various forms. By restricting the entry of the new forms, you create imperfection in the market, and so on. So that topic I will discuss later on. I mean, what are different market forms and all that I'll discuss, all related issues I'll discuss later on. But at this point in time, I can tell you, classical economists believed about an ideal market form. They believed that the market in which goods and services are bought and sold, factors are bought and sold, is perfectly competitive. There is no imperfection in the market. Prices of the goods and services and factors are decided according to the market rules of demand and supply, and there is no intervention by the government and all that. And there are many other attributes which I am not going to spell out at this point in time as far as market conditions are concerned or market attributes are concerned. But these are certain assumptions based on which, and moreover, they also assume that factor, particularly wages and interests, are flexible. They believe that wages remain flexible, interests remain flexible if there is unemployment in the economy among labor owners, then the price of labor, that is wage, can come down automatically. So price of labor, which is wage or salary, will depend upon the relative strength of demand and supply of labor. So price will keep changing depending upon how much is the supply, how much is the demand for labor. Then labor market would be automatically cleared. Nobody would remain unemployed. So these are certain arguments classical economists or assumptions they took, based on which they argued that an economy can automatically attain full employment equilibrium income. Aggregate demand can become equal to aggregate supply. But Keynes questioned everything. And in fact, this was the model which was in place till 1930s. This classical theory was in place till 1930s. Most of the economies across the globe were following this kind of a model. But then we experienced Great Depression. Economies got slowed down, all the economies across the globe, I mean, the developed in particular, and there are a lot of other, concomitant problems. Then Keynes came up. John Maynard Keynes published his book in 1936. By 1939, the recession got over, or the depression got over. Economy started employing or adopting the Keynesian model as a replacement to the classical model. So how is Keynesian model different? Keynes said that we should develop model which should be applicable to the short run, not to the long run. So Keynesian economics is short run economics, not long run economics. Because he said that the problems arise in the short run and they are to be overcome in the short run only. We cannot wait for the long run to automatically cure it. So Keynesian economics is short run economics. Second, Keynes said that the economy experiences recession or could experience recession because of the deficiency in demand, or an economy can attain equilibrium income only when demand is taken care of. Assuming that supply creates its own demand is not true. What is necessary is that demand is taken care of. Now the question is, as if you recollect all that I have discussed, the demand, when we say an economy attains equilibrium income when aggregate demand becomes equal to aggregate supply. Keynes said that this demand is important, not the supply. There is supply, how we can ensure that demand becomes equal to supply. Unlike what the classical economists have said, if there is supply, there would be automatic demand. Keynes said it may not be possible. It is necessary that we understand what determines demand. But before we try to understand what determines demand, we must know what constitutes demands. So broadly, we can categorize demand into, in a closed economy, you can categorize demand into three categories. One is consumption demand, private consumption demand. Second one is investment demand. Third one can be government demand or government purchase or government expenditure. If we open up the economy, then there can be import and export demand. One is a leakage, another is an injection. So if I confine my analysis to the closed economy only, which can be generalized, what is necessary to understand is that what determines each component of the demands. Unless we know or unless we understand what determines each component of the demand, we possibly may not be equal to make demand equal to supply. So among the three demands I talk about, government demand is something that government usually makes. We need not have to talk about the factors determining government expenditures. Rather, we need to see, I mean, it may be important, but then that doesn't constitute a very important component. Rather, we need to understand the two private demands. One is the private consumption demand, the other one is private investment demand. So what determines, it is important to understand what determines the consumption demand, what determines the investment demand. If we know what determines consumption and investment demand, we possibly can take care of those factors which can increase the demand so that the demand becomes equal to supply. So that takes me to deal with the first demand function, that is the consumption function or the consumption demand function. So I shall first begin with the consumption function what Keynes had propounded. Then I shall discuss the investment function. Then finally I shall again talk about equilibrium income and a few other topics related to Keynesian economics. So first we shall begin with what is consumption function, what is consumption demand function, which basically talks about the factors determining consumption, aggregate consumption. Obviously, remember we are discussing macroeconomics. So I am talking about aggregate consumption, aggregate investment, not individual consumption and individual investment. What determines the total consumption of an economy? So what Keynes proposes as the factor to determine consumption. First, what Keynes says is that consumption is a psychological behavior on the part of the consumers, on the part of the households. So this consumption has a is determined by a particular factor. What Keynes says is that the aggregate consumption of an economy is a linear function of the personal disposable income, absolute personal disposable income of an economy. So I am using certain terms, just carefully listen to this. According to consumption, according to Keynes, aggregate consumption in the current time period or current consumption is a function of the current income. Current consumption is a function of the current income. How much will consume today in the current time period? Suppose I talk about a particular year, 2020. How much will consume in 2020 depends on how much is the income we earn in 2020. So current consumption depends upon current income. You might wonder, can there be other possibilities? In fact, there are many theories which have been developed with respect to this consumption function. There are theories to argue that current consumption depends upon the permanent income. Some have said current consumption depends upon life cycle income. That means how much you earn in your entire lifetime, the average of that could be determining your consumption. Keynes doesn't talk about that. Keynes says how much you will consume in the current period depends upon the current income. So I am not getting into the debate, that is a different topic altogether. I am only talking about Keynes in economics at this point in time. And according to Keynes, current consumption depends upon the current income. But there doesn't end the story. What he further tells is that current consumption depends upon current absolute income. The moment you use the term absolute income, one can say that different from absolute income, there can be relative income. So there is also a theory to tell that all that an individual consumes may depend upon his or her relative income, not the absolute income. So what is the difference between absolute income and relative income? That means how much I earn decides how much I like to consume in a particular time period. That is my current absolute income. But when I say no, it doesn't depend upon current absolute income, it depends upon relative income. What could that mean? That could mean two things. One is that my income vis-a-vis the average neighborhood income, the neighborhood in which I am residing, what is the average income they have, that has something to do with my consumption as well. So my consumption vis-a-vis the consumption of my neighborhood, sorry, income, my income vis-a-vis the income of my neighborhood could be a factor to determine my consumption. Or my current income vis-a-vis my past peak income could be a factor which is called relative income, could be determining my consumption. So what do you observe here? Like it is something like this, that suppose somebody's income keeps rising years after years. As the income keeps rising, one could be consuming more, then reaches the peak. Then the income starts falling. So when your income was rising, you could have exhibited a particular consumption behavior. Your consumption might have been rising, but when your income keeps falling, your current income is lower than the past peak income, the past highest income. So how much you will consume today will depend upon what is your current income vis-a-vis the past peak income, that is the relative income. And similar to that, there could be other possibilities. But Keynes doesn't talk about that. Keynes talks about what is called current absolute income. Further, he tells that it depends upon disposable personal income. Absolute income that we talk about in the current time period, it should be disposable personal income. What is that? If I say income is Y that I earn in the current time period, my disposable personal income is Y minus T, the tax I paid to the government. So current consumption depends upon current absolute disposable personal income. But then what is the relationship between the two? Okay, it depends upon the current consumption depends upon the current income, fine. But what is the relationship? What is the nature of the relationship between the two? The relationship is that consumption, current consumption is a linear function of the current income with a positive intercept. And what does it mean? And further, if you decipher this, further if you try to explain, try to explain what exactly this is all about. According to Keynes, current consumption is an increasing function of the current income. It is an increasing function of the current income, but there is a particular relationship we come across. What is that? People are disposed as a rule and on the average to increase their consumption as their income increases, but not by as much as the increase in their income, which implies as income increases, consumption will increase, but not by as much as the increase in their income. So consumption, with the increase in income, consumption will increase, which implies that consumption is an increasing function of income. But entire increased income is not consumed. This can be explained or presented with the help of this particular formulation. Keynes says that a part of the income is consumed, the other part is saved. Income is the only determinant of consumption and saving. Income is the only determinant of consumption and saving, according to Keynes. You might like to know, can there be any other factor to determine consumption and saving? And how is Keynesian economics different from other economics? According to classical economists, both consumptions and saving happen to be the functions of the interest rate. Classical economists believed that rate of interest is a reward for saving. People save more when the rate of interest increases and vice versa. And as they save more, they consume less, because the source of saving and consumption is same. So if they save more, they will consume less, which implies that consumption also depends upon the rate of interest. But what is the relationship? Saving is a direct function of the rate of interest. Consumption is a decreasing function of the rate of interest, or an inverse function of the rate of interest. Higher the rate of interest, lower is consumption. but higher is the saving. But what Keynes says? Keynes says consumption and saving do not depend upon rate of interest. Consumption and saving both are dependent upon income, current income. How much you will consume will depend upon how much you earn in the current time period, and so is saving. So entire income is distributed between consumption and saving. A part of the income is consumed, the other part is saved. Hence, saving is a counterpart of consumption. But then, what is consumption function according to Keynes? See, if I now if I present consumption function with the help of an equation, according to Keynes, C is equal to A plus BY. C is equal to A plus BY, where both A and B are greater than 0 and B is greater than 0 and less than 1. So, what does C represent? C is the consumption, total consumption of an economy in a particular time period. Y here is disposable income. As I have already explained, it is actually total income minus taxes. And A, C is equal to A plus BY. So what is A? A is autonomous consumption. A is that amount of consumption which is there at 0 level of income. It is that amount of consumption, A, or in other words, A is independent of income. A is autonomous consumption means it is independent of income. It is independent of determinants. In this case, the determinant is Y. So A is that amount of consumption which is there at 0 level of income. The question is, where does it come from? It can come from two sources. Or this A, which is autonomous consumption, involves these savings, not savings. It is these savings. These savings may arise in two forms. One is borrowing, the other one is withdrawal of the past savings. When current income is 0, there would be some minimum amount of consumption to happen. That is A. And that would happen out of the past savings. We might have saved some money in the past, a part of our income in the past, or we might borrow. We might borrow from the banks, from the friends, from relatives, and so on. So we might borrow. So autonomous consumption is nothing but these savings, which comes in two forms. One is withdrawal of the past savings. The second one is borrowing. And what is B? B is nothing but the slope of the consumption function. B is the slope of the consumption function, del C by del Y, which is called marginal propensity to consume. B is called marginal propensity to consume, which is nothing but del C by del Y, slope of the consumption function. What does it mean? Slope of the consumption function is nothing but how much is the change in consumption happening resulting from 1 unit change in income. If there is 1 rupee increase in income, by how much does consumption rise or change? That is nothing but the marginal propensity to consume, or the slope of the consumption function. From this consumption function, that is C is equal to BY, where A is greater than 0 and B is varying between 0 and 1, we can draw three important conjectures or three important properties which will offer implications for an economy. One is that the marginal propensity to consume varies between 0 and 1. which I was just telling, marginal propensity to consume, that is B, will vary between 0 and 1. So, which implies that it is neither equal to 0 nor is it equal to 1. Del C by del Y is neither equal to 0 nor is it equal to 1. What does it mean? It implies that if MPC is 0, suppose, then whenever there is increase in income, the entire changed income is saved, nothing is consumed. If MPC is equal to 1, it implies entire changed income is consumed, nothing is saved. So these are two extreme cases. Neither of them is true. What Keynes says is that a part of the increased income is consumed, the other part is saved. So MPC can never be equal to 0, nor can it be equal to 1. Nor can it be equal to 1. It will vary between 0 and 1. Second, and when it is varying between 0 and 1, it can be any value. It can be half, it can be 3 by 4, it can be 2 by 5, it can be any other value. But it cannot be equal to 0, nor can it be equal to 1. Suppose I say the value of the MPC is 3 by 4. What does it mean? It implies that out of every 4 rupees increase in income, 3 rupees will be consumed and 1 rupee will be saved. Because I have already said y is equal to C plus S. All that is not consumed is saved. All that is not saved is consumed. So if MPC is 3 by 4, then MPS will become 1 minus 3 by 4, that is 1 by 4. So out of 4 rupees increase in income, 3 rupees will be consumed and 1 rupee will be saved. And this MPC value is assumed to be constant. Not only does it vary between 0 and 1, it is not equal to 0 nor is it equal to 1, but also it is constant. Which proves the fact that consumption is a linear function of income. I have already said in the very beginning that according to Keynes, consumption is a linear function of income. How do you prove that the function is linear? You can prove the function to be linear only when the slope coefficient is constant. In this case, we are telling that the MPC value, whatever we estimate for an economy in a particular time period, would remain more or less constant in the short run. Remember, I have said earlier, as Keynes proposed, Keynesian economics is short-run economics. So the consumption function I am presenting is short-run consumption function. It is something that Keynes has proposed. In the short run, MPC value varies between 0 and 1 and is constant. So MPC value is, being constant will prove that consumption is a linear function of income. If MPC value keeps changing with the change in y, then it would turn out to be a non-linear function. So consumption happens to be a linear function of income, but it will remain. The MPC value will vary between 0 and 1. When I say it is constant and it is varying between 0 and 1, it doesn't mean that there is any sacrosanct value to be offered to all the countries across the globe. MPC of the Indian economy in a particular time period could be different from the MPC of the American economy or British economy. We have estimated MPC of the Indian economy on the basis of India's consumption function, how much we consume when our income changes. We estimate for ourselves. We exhibit a particular behavior that is captured through the consumption function. Suppose in India, MPC value is 3/4. In USA, it could be half. That means in USA, out of every 2 rupees increase in income, 1 rupee is consumed, and another 1 rupee is saved. In India, when there is increase in income by 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 4 rupees, there is increase in consumption by 3 rupees. So India's MPC could be 3/4. America's MPC could be half. Even within the country, MPC of the rural economy could be different from the MPC of the urban economy. You could experience a higher MPC value for the rural economy compared to the MPC value of the urban economy. But whatever you get, whatever MPC you have estimated for the rural economy in the current time period, or for the urban economy for the current time period, or for the Indian economy for the current time period, would remain unchanged in the short run. By and large, it will remain unchanged. Hence, we can continue to prove or argue that C is a linear function of Y. Second conjecture of Keynesian consumption function is that average propensity to consume falls as income rises. There is a difference between MPC and APC. MPC is marginal propensity to consume. It is the slope of the consumption function. But what is APC? APC is nothing but the ratio of C to Y. It is total consumption divided by total income. Average propensity to consume is nothing but the fraction of the income consumed. We are estimating a fraction of the income which is being consumed. The ratio of C to Y, total consumption divided by total income. So what will observe? If C is equal to BY, A plus BY, then what will happen to APC? APC will be C by Y, which is nothing but A plus BY by Y. So then you will get something like A by Y plus B. So what does it imply? It implies that APC will always be greater than MPC. B is MPC. So APC will always be greater than MPC. But what is more important here is that when income will increase, the average propensity to consume will decrease. Average propensity to consume will keep decreasing as income will keep increasing. The fraction of the income consumed will decrease. If the fraction of the income consumed decreases with the increase in income, the fraction of the income saved will increase. Unlike MPC, which is assumed to be constant, to prove that C is a linear function of Y, APC tells something else. APC tells that the fraction of the income consumed decreases with the increase in income. And this is the crux of the problem. What Keynes visualizes is that as an economy becomes more and more prosperous, the fraction of the income consumed will decrease, the fraction of the income saved will increase. And unless all that is saved is invested, the economy is bound to face recession. economy is bound to face deficiency in demand given supply, leading to recession. So what we observe is that the Keynesian consumption function proves that a prosperous economy is likely to experience deficiency in demand given supply for the simple reason that consumption is a linear function of income. Consumption happens to be a function of income only, and it's a linear function of income. And in the process of explaining that, we find out that as an economy becomes more and more prosperous, APC keeps decreasing, APS keeps increasing. Hence, unless all that is saved is invested, there is a possibility that economy would experience recession. Last important point here is, which I have already explained or which I have already highlighted, that is, according to Keynes, income is the primary determinant of consumption, and the interest rate doesn't have an important role to play. So this is a very important attribute or property of the Keynesian consumption function, that as long as you assume that consumption happens to be a function of the current income, you can prove all that I have discussed so far, that it's a linear function of income. Then you say MPC is constant, MPC value varies between 0 and 1, and finally you prove that APC decreases with the increase in income. So that means a prosperous economy is likely to experience deficiency in demand given supply more often than not compared to the developing economies or less prosperous economies. So this can be proved. I mean, just I will take an empirical example. I mean, an example here to show you how all that I presented with the help of that equation, consumption function, and the properties or the conjectures I presented, they can be proved with the help of a graph and also with the help of an example, a numerical example, I mean, with a set of a data. Let's take, I mean, it's about a data set collected from a group of people. Suppose we have undertaken how to estimate the consumption function. In order to estimate the consumption function or the saving function, which is a counterpart of consumption, we need what? We need income data, we need consumption data, and then we need the saving data. Assuming that all that is not consumed is saved, if you have consumption data, then you can automatically get the saving data as well. So obviously we need, in order to estimate consumption function, we need income data and consumption data. What we can do? We can collect income of the entire economy, each individual's income in a particular time period. And then correspondingly, each individual's expenditure, consumption expenditure, how much is the total income, then how much is the total consumption. So, I mean, this can be proven in 3 different ways. We can take cross-section data, we can take time series data, we can take panel data. What do we mean by these 3 kinds of data sets? Cross-section data means in a particular time period, from a cross-section of population, we collect data. Every single individual in the same time period is asked to give the data on his or her income and the consumption. Or we can collect time series data. That means over a period of time, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, we collect data annually or quarterly or half yearly from an individual or from an economy, like suppose India's total data, total income data over the last 50 years and India's total consumption data over the last 50 years. Then when we try to establish the relationship between income and consumption data, we apply a time series model to establish the relationship between income and consumption, to predict the relationship between income and consumption. Third one can be a combination of cross-section and time series. Suppose you take the case of India, there are several states, each state's total income data available. Suppose there are 30 states, and their income data you are collecting, consumption data you are collecting every year over a period of 20 years. So 30 states into 20 time period, you get the number of observations, that would become 600. Each year, for each year you have collected data for each state. Then over a period of 20 years you have collected data on income and expenditure, income and consumption. So you can have a panel data regression or a pool data. I mean, you pull the cross-section and time series together. Suppose I talk about the cross-section data. That means suppose I conduct a survey on a group of individuals who are earning members. I ask each individual in a particular time period that how much was your income last month. From that, I ask them how much was their income last month, and correspondingly, I would ask them how much was their consumption corresponding to the income. Given the income, how much did they consume? How much did they spend on demanding consumer goods? And how much did they save? I might find something like this. That some reported that their income on the average was 0. They did not consume anything. Sorry, they did not have income at all. They did not earn any income last month. As you know, income is a flow. I have told that in the previous class. Income is a flow. That is generated only when you sell your factors. Like if you look at the typical household's income in a particular month, suppose your only source of income is labor. You work every day, you earn wage. Then in a particular month you decided not to work. Then your income becomes 0 because you did not work. You did not sell your labor. It could happen. When you might find some people in the group who you interviewed, you surveyed, they reported that their income was 0. Though they reported that their income was 0, they consumed 10. They said that they have consumed 10. 10 could be 10,000 rupees or 10 rupees, whatever you assume it to be. Just 10. They consume 10, which implies their saving is minus 10. You remember I have said when there is consumption at 0 level of income, that is nothing but autonomous consumption. So 10 happens to be autonomous consumption. That is A. C is equal to A plus BY. So this 10 is nothing but A. It is autonomous consumption. This autonomous consumption is nothing but this savings. So if there is 10 as consumption at 0 level of income, saving would become minus 10, which is this savings. Then you see, given the total sample of suppose 500 individuals I surveyed, I found that on the average, another group reported that their income was 10. Those whose income was 10, they reported that they consumed 15. So they still consumed more than what they earned. Another group reported that their income on the average was 20 and they consumed as much as they earned. That was 20. Next group reported that their income was 30 on the average. However, they consumed 25, which would lead to positive saving. Another group reported that their income is 40, and they consumed 30, saved 10. Final group reported that their income on the average was 50, they consumed 35, saved 15. Now, this particular example explains every single conjecture I have talked about, the arguments I have developed earlier. First thing is that consumption and saving both are the increasing functions of income. That you can prove from this. As you can see here, as income keeps rising from 0 to 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, consumption keeps rising. So consumption happens to be an increasing function of income, and so is saving. Second one is the MPC value varies between 0 and 1. In this case, how will you estimate the value of the MPC? You know, MPC value is nothing but the slope of the consumption function, or what is the change in consumption resulting from 1 unit change in income. So how will you find out from this example? You take any two levels of income, then compare that with two levels of consumption. See the difference. Then you can find out the value of the MPC. Income rises from 0 to 10. How much is the rise in income? It is by 10. So del Y is 10. Consumption rises from 10 to 15. So 15 minus 10, how much is del C? It is 5. So what is MPC value or del C by del Y? It is 5 by 10. Then again you see, there is further rise in income from 10 to 20, again by 10. Consumption rises from 15 to 20, again by 5. There is further rise in income from 20 to 30, rise in consumption again by 5, 20 to 25, and so on. So from this example, you can see del C by del Y is half. Out of every 2 rupees increase in income, 1 rupee is consumed and another 1 rupee is saved. Not only that, MPC value is less than 1 and greater than 0, but also MPC value is constant. As you observe here, with the rise in income, MPC value is not changing. It remains the same. 0 to 10 change, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40. As income keeps rising, MPC value doesn't change. MPC value remains unchanged at 0.5 or half. So the first two properties, that is MPC value is varying between 0 and 1 and MPC value is constant, both are proven here. Third property is MPC has to decrease with the increase in income. That is the most important property here as far as Keynesian consumption function is concerned. What you observe here, how much is MPC, how much is MPC at 0 level of income? At any level of income, if you like to know MPC, what is that? It is total C divided by total Y. So at 0 level of income, APC is C by Y, that is 10 by 0, which is infinite. Then how much is APC at income of 10? It is 15 by 10. So 1.5. How much is APC at 20? It is 20 by 21. Then gradually it decreases. Below 1. It becomes below 1 up in when income becomes 30 and keeps decreasing further. So APC continuously decreases with the increase in income. So as an economy becomes more and more prosperous, what is prosperity of an economy? Its income rises. As the income of an economy rises, it becomes more and more prosperous. The average propensity to consume, the fraction of the income consumed decreases, the fraction of the income saved increases. So American economy is much larger than the Indian economy. Our total GDP has not yet even reached $3 trillion. American economy is having an income greater than 16 or 17 trillion dollars. So American economy is likely to experience slowdown much frequently compared to India. Because in American economy, because with the rise in income, the APC could be decreasing in that economy at a much faster rate compared to what we could experience in a country like India. So a prosperous economy is bound to face recession more often than not compared to a developing economy like India or some other economies. That's the crux of the problem. If you present the things graphically, all that I said, the consumption function, how would the consumption function look like? We have an equality line drawn from the origin, having a 45-degree angle. On this line, y is equal to c plus s all everywhere. This is the equality line. Then on this, I have drawn the consumption curve, which has a positive intercept, that is OC, which you can say in this example it is 10. Then it is a straight line. The consumption curve here is a straight line to prove that consumption is a linear function of income. And in this example, it is half. Okay, maybe depending upon what kind of value you get, you will find the slope of the consumption function to vary. It can become steeper or flatter depending upon what is the value we are talking about, what is the value of the MPC you talk about. So C curve, as you can see here, the C path is a straight line having a positive intercept, and it, as you can see here, it cuts this equality line at point YT or YI, and towards the left of this, C is greater than Y. Towards the right of that point, C is less than Y. So this is the typical consumption function you can graphically present. So I shall stop here. I'll discuss some other issues related to this, particularly the saving function as a counterpart of consumption function in the next class. Then I shall take you to the next topic. Okay, I shall stop here.